Does no contact work on borderline personality disorder? This has been a video that people have asked me about for a very long time, and so I've decided to do this and give you my thoughts on if no contact works with someone who's borderline and what to expect if someone is borderline personality disorder and they've broken up with you. Borderline personality disorder is characterized by impulsivity, by mood swings, by difficulty to stay in committed relationships, and there's often a lot of telltale signs if someone is borderline. I'll provide an extended edition in the description below of what that is, but a lot of times if you know, you know, and that's maybe why you're watching this video, is that you have been broken up with by someone who is borderline personality disorder, or you suspect that they are. Maybe they haven't been diagnosed, but they sure act like it, that kind of thing. And Coach Ken on my staff has a lot of videos on dealing with people who have BPD, who are borderline personality disorder, and you're in a relationship with them. He talks about that and some of the things you're going to get into and what to expect and what to see and how to respond. I will link to his channel in the description below. People with BPD normally have double standards, and usually you are not on the receiving end of that. Usually you're the one having to deal with the double standard where if you do something, you think, if I did that, they would break up with me. But they do it to you almost routinely, and you just take it, and they expect it to be that way. And sometimes people with borderline will actually even admit to these things, that yes, there are double standards, and that's okay. Why? Because they want it that way, apparently. And so people who've been in a relationship with someone who's borderline will oftentimes be afraid to stand up to them. And it's because of that double standard, that it's like you are in your place and you're supposed to practically worship them, and yet they can just give you crumbs from the table and you're supposed to be happy with it and always willing to step up, and you better not be disrespectful to them, whereas they are disrespectful to you almost on a regular basis. And so it's important that if you have been with this person in a relationship with someone who's borderline, you need to know yourself a lot in this, because a lot of what your fears are about not contacting them after they've broken up with you is that you have been mistreated in this relationship. Most of the time when someone's in a relationship with someone who's borderline, they have been mistreated. They've been treated like they are second in the relationship. They've been treated like it's okay for them to be mistreated, that they should just be lucky that the other person is even giving them the time of day. And borderline is actually something that shares a lot in common with narcissism. And I'm talking clinical narcissism. These are rare things. People throw around the word narcissist nowadays, and people can act self-centered and selfish. That does not make them a narcissist. Narcissistic personality disorder is pretty rare and very extreme to deal with, but it shares a lot of similarities with borderline. Number two, people with BPD experience emotional whiplash. That's one of the reasons no contact can work really well with them, is that just because they have this really intense feeling, this desire to break up with you, it doesn't mean that that won't change quickly in days, weeks, maybe months, but usually it doesn't take that long. And you probably know this from the relationship, when they would just get so angry at you over the smallest things. Sometimes you don't even know what to say because they're so upset at you over something that you don't even know how it affects them or why they're mad about it, and you didn't have any bad intentions by it. And if it were you, you would just let it go, because the two of you love each other and you want to work out this relationship and you want to be peaceful with each other and just have a great relationship, and you would let it go. But they act as though you have murdered millions of puppies. And that's kind of the norm when you are with someone who's borderline. So remember that this person can experience emotional extremes. So they hate you one day, they can love you the next day, especially if you use the no contact rule. Being in a relationship with someone who's borderline personality disorder is extremely difficult. It's not for the faint of heart. I don't recommend it. If you have been broken up with by someone who's borderline, to be honest with you, my recommendation is that you move on with your life, because it will probably only get worse. I coach people on how to live with someone who's borderline personality disorder, and it's very difficult. Most people can't do it. They can't stay that perfect all the time. They can't walk on those eggshells without cracking them. And so if you know for a fact that this person is borderline personality disorder, or they fit the bill, they sound like it, I suggest you try to move on. But if you don't want to, if you absolutely want them back for whatever reason, and sometimes it's a trauma response, and it's somewhat of what they have trained you to be, that you are used to their mistreatment and that you think there is some love bombing coming. There's some great experiences together we're going to have, because they know to keep you, there has to be some positives. There has to be some good in the relationship that you would actually want, or else you won't endure the negatives and the horrific treatment at their hands sometimes. And a lot of times you will think it's worth it. If I can just get through this difficulty now, I know there's a good time. People will even say, but the good times are really good. And they can definitely seem that way when they are contrasted with terrible times. Even a basic, simple time can seem amazing and wonderful when you compare it to these difficult times that often come up when someone is borderline personality disorder and they're letting you have it. So just keep in mind that just because they treated you horribly at the breakup and they said there's not any hope and that they never want to see you again and they don't have any interest in being in the relationship with you again, that they are prone to emotional whiplash. And so a lot of times no contact, where they actually see you being respectable, having dignity, not chasing them, and they actually have to wonder if their shenanigans have turned you away, turned you off, and you're not interested in being with them anymore. That is when the borderline people have the most extreme responses to no contact. We're talking the begging and pleading for you to take them back and that they're so sorry. So if you're interested in getting back with this person, that is a possibility. And remember their extreme swings in mood and positions and thoughts, and how a lot of times they can even say something and then a few weeks later say the total opposite, and you're just supposed to go along with whichever, right? Well, that's par for the course. So keep that in mind. Before I get to number 3, get more information on my $7 reunion blueprint. It's only $7. It's a great blueprint to help you get your ex back, to know what to expect, and to kind of know what's going on in their mind after they've broken up with you. And this includes people who are BPD, borderline personality disorder. It's the reunion blueprint. It's just $7. You can get it at reunionblueprint.com. That's reunionblueprint.com, and the link is in the description below. Thank you for your support and for listening to my commercial. Number 3, something you really need to know about borderline is that the people who experience that disorder typically punish weakness. And it's rooted in childhood. There's a reason that the majority of people who are diagnosed with borderline are women, and it's often because they don't have a strong masculine figure growing up who's a protector. A lot of times that person is an abuser. And then the feminine figure, their mother, a lot of times either will be worse to them and the father will not be willing to stand up to her, or he's passive, or he's gone, he's absent, and so he's not standing up to her, and so she endures mistreatment by her mother. That could be separately, or that could be as well as her father. And so in a lot of ways, she is looking for someone who is stronger than her father. And this can impact men too, of course. And if you are in a relationship with someone who's borderline, a lot of times they are looking for someone who is stronger than their father or stronger than their mother, who could stand up to the abusive parent. And if they see weakness in you, for example, that you can't stand up to them, that you take their mistreatment, that they treat you horribly, but you're still just taking them back repeatedly, even when they have said horrible things, that if you said to them that you think they would break up with you and leave you forever and there would be no coming back, that you would just really get on their side that shows hatred if you said something like they said to you. And so a borderline person will oftentimes, even if you two get back together, they will look at you as pathetic. They will look down at you because you took them back after they were so terrible to you. And they think, if this person took me back after I was that awful to them, they're not very strong. So they couldn't stand up to my mom, or they couldn't stand up to my dad. They're not strong enough. And they're not thinking those words. It's more of something that feels instinctive to them. It's an emotional feeling, and it causes attraction to drop. They are attracted to strength, someone who will not tolerate disrespect from them, someone who will not tolerate all of their back and forth changes in position, double standards, mistreatment, and narcissistic behavior. Which brings me to number 4. Accountability is very important. If you do not hold someone who is borderline accountable for their words, where they say something and you make sure that they actually have to stick with it, at least as far as it's up to you, if they're going to interact with you or do things or treat you a certain way, that if they say things, if they give you certain words, even if they say, I want to break up with you, and you go into no contact, that's holding them accountable for their words. They said they wanted to break up, not you. They said it. So you are letting them experience the consequences of their actions. That is possibly the most important thing you need to know about dealing with someone who's borderline, is that it is important that they experience the consequences of their actions, because so often they have learned they can get around those and that there are no consequences to their actions. Just like when they mistreat you, when they talk down to you, when they have these double standards. And if you were to have any kind of boundary or any kind of concern that maybe they're going out with their friends late somewhere that maybe they shouldn't be going, maybe it's disrespectful to the relationship for them to act that way since they are in a committed relationship, they are more likely to attack you for suggesting that they shouldn't do it. And yet they can simultaneously have the position that you can't do that, even though they should be able to. And that if you don't like them going, well, you're just insecure. But if you go, you're in trouble. And that's kind of something in dealing with someone who's borderline. There's a lot of times when you think, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. But yet they're rarely in trouble with you, almost never. And you would do things that would cause them to just leave you, and you would definitely be in trouble with them, or they would be angry and yell at you and things like that. But then they do it to you, and it's supposed to just be a normal event. So it's very important that you hold them accountable for their actions and their words. And if you don't do that, if you don't hold them accountable, if you don't go into no contact after they break up with you, and it's a hard no contact, minimum 2-3 months, something like that. And I suggest you don't ever break it with someone who's borderline, that you do not break no contact. That if they don't contact you back, you have to basically present it to them that it's over forever. That because of how they treated you and because they broke up with you, that you're not going to do the work of getting the two of you back together. You are not going to fix what they broke. And by doing that, you don't enable their behavior, their mistreatment of you, their refusal to really be committed in the relationship, that they could just walk away from it with them, but they're mad at you and that they're not even going to try and things like that. That's somewhat typical of someone who's borderline, and they need to know that you're not going to bail them out, or else they don't have reason to do anything any differently in the future. Before I get to number 5, again, a reminder about my reunion blueprint. It's only $7, and it's a blueprint to help you get your ex back. The reunion blueprint is at reunionblueprint.com, and you can get it today and start watching the videos. Number 5, does it really matter if they're borderline or not? And the reason I ask that question is, if they mistreat you and if they act like they're borderline, does it really matter if they're clinically borderline, or if you just see that they match a lot of the symptoms? Does it matter? Because if they treat you that way, even if they're able to point to some disorder, which technically a lot of these things are theoretical, they're behaviors. And if they mistreat you, just because they can put letters beside it and call it BPD or something like that, do you really want to be with someone who will treat you that way? And then it's supposed to be okay because we give it a name. So what I'm asking is, if they treat you that way, what does it matter if you call it borderline, if you call it narcissism, if you call it bipolar? I don't care what you call it. Why would you want to be in a relationship with someone who you know will treat you that way? And a lot of times blaming it on that, letting them just blame it on that as though they don't have any accountability to it, is only going to make your life worse, because they can use it as an excuse. And so if you have been broken up with by someone who's borderline and you think, well, I want them back because I love them, and the reason they mistreated me is because they have this disorder, and so I'm going to tolerate it, think twice. Because if they've broken up with you, this could be your escape. And I know that you have experienced a lot of punishment from them, a lot of difficulty from them. A lot of times you felt like that they treat you as though you're less than them, you're second, or maybe even not even second, and you're tired of the double standards and all that. This is a chance possibly for you to escape this person. They've broken up with you. If you can just move on. A lot of times they will see you as heroic and attractive if you try to move on. And so that's even something you have to consider, is that when you try to move on, they might try chasing you down to get you back because they want that validation. They want to know that how they treated you has still not made you to where you don't want to be with them. They want to think that even though they treated you that way, that you still want to be with them because they are just a goddess or god or whatever. So I don't care what letters or what name you put on it. If they are treating you that way, what is in it for you? So rather than excusing it and saying, well, they have BPD or whatever, just look at how they treat you and ask yourself logically, do I want this going forward? Because if you don't, I don't care what letters are used to try to explain away the behavior. The behavior is what you have to deal with. The mistreatment is what you have to deal with. And for the life of me, I don't understand why anyone would have put up with that. So keep that in mind. No contact definitely works on people who are borderline. I see it all the time. Obviously, nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is 100%, but it usually works really well because they don't think you can do it. They don't think that you can not contact them. They don't think that you can stay away. They think that you will beg and plead and cry and all those things you've done before, because they have become, in so many ways, your dictator and your master and the person you worship. And they think they can treat you in any way whatsoever, and you should just be a terrific partner to them. You should just chase them down when they run away and all that. That is not what I suggest at all. I suggest that you hold them accountable, that you don't contact them, you don't fix what they broke, and that finally, you stand up for yourself. That is something that's going to be very attractive to them, and I tell you that as a warning, because they will come back to you sometimes when they see that strength, and then when you become a normal person again, they attack you for your supposed weakness, even though it's simple things that people in a loving, committed relationship should let go and overlook and just move on from together, because they're things that don't matter. And if you're with someone who's borderline, or you were, then you know what I'm talking about. Remember my reunion blueprint, and you can set up a coaching session with me if you are with someone who's borderline and you're needing help knowing how to handle that, how to live with that, how to get them back, things like that, or just want to learn more about it. You can set up a coaching session with me at myexbackcoach.com, and you can click on my name and you'll see coaching session. This has been Coach Lee, and as always, thank you for watching.